The best bass fishing days of the year are right around the corner, but the problem is most of us work full time jobs, which means we really have to pick and choose our spots when it comes to requesting time off. But have no fear, because today I'm bringing you guys the ultimate guide on what days to request off and what lures to use during that time period so you can go catch your personal best bass this year. Let's get to it, guys. The first time frame we're going to talk about in this video is late winter. This is the most underrated part of the year in my opinion. Bass will be extremely large this time of year due to heavy feeding, and their eggs are also coming in, making them even bigger. They also tend to be a little bit lethargic due to cold water, meaning landing your PB might be easier this time of the year than it will be in, say, June or July. I've caught my personal best 3 years in a row during this time period. This year, the peak of that time frame is going to be from March 17th through April 2nd. The reason for these specific days is the lunar cycles. Bass typically spawn around full moons. Most people in the mid-Atlantic United States tend to think of April and May as the two best spawning months. But if you get a warm snap in later March, a lot of your bigger bass will pull up shallow to start dropping their eggs. Most anglers are not spending a lot of time on the water this time of the year, which means you might have the entire lake to yourself. My two favorite lures to throw this time of year are going to be a finesse jig and a 5 to 6 inch swim bait worked on bottom. Try to target rocky points leading into spawning areas or deep drop-offs in spawning coves. The next time we're going to talk about is early spring. This is the second best time to put your PB in the boat. At this point, some of the bass are on beds, most of the bass are still pre-spawn. I personally consider this time frame the easiest for most anglers to go out and catch their personal best. The reason for that is actually one of the lures we're using, but I'll get into that a little bit later. This year, the peak of that time frame runs from April 16th through May 2nd. I really like the 3 days before the full moon and the 3 days after the full moon rather than the day of the full moon itself. This is because bass really like to feed up before they commit to spawning. The two lures I recommend this time of year are a Zoom Horny Toad and a Wacky Rig Senko. The Horny Toad is the first topwater bait for me that will draw big strikes, and I love to use it on warm days in late afternoon to evening, especially if we have higher water. Try skipping it around near laydowns and trees in spawning pockets. But for me, the Horny Toad really shines as a secondary bait. The real star of the show is the Wacky Rig Senko. From early April to late May, the Wacky Rig Senko is the best lure for catching big bass. There's just something about that subtle shimmy that drives those big bass absolutely crazy. Try skipping that Wacky Rig Senko around in spawning pockets near sparse wood and hold on for the ride. Just make sure those big bass don't run back up in that wood and get you wrapped up. Green pumpkin is my go-to in clear water, and of course, black and blue gets it done in dirty water. The last time frame I want to cover is early May. This has to be the most fun time of the year, and if you're getting into fishing, this is probably the time you really want to go out. That's because the fish are typically very aggressive on bed and guarding fry, and you can catch numbers of fish along with numbers of big fish. This year, the dates fall from May 5th to May 11th. Lakes are normally extremely productive this time of year, but the downside is everyone knows that, meaning you're probably going to have a ton of pressure on your water. And that's exactly why I really like to head to the rivers this time of year. When fishing the river, look for your sloughs or your backwaters off the main river. These hold large populations of fish and can be an absolute blast when you find mega schools. The key is to make sure you have a good anchor system. The last thing you want to do is float over fish and spook them. Getting out of your kayak and fishing from the bank can also be a really good strategy this time of year. There are two different lures that really excel here. One is going to be a small crankbait, and the other one is going to be a whopper plopper. I love to start off with jigs and small crankbaits on those cooler mornings, and as the day goes on and warms up, keep trying that whopper plopper. There is nothing better than being the first one on the river throwing the whopper plopper for smallmouths. If you only have access to a lake, the three lures I would recommend would be a weightless Senko, a jig, and a popper. These three baits are going to do a really good job of targeting bass in all spawning stages. The last tip I want to give you guys is probably the most important, and that is how to take your time off. I don't want you all to take your time off in week-long blocks. The reason being is because weather in April and May is extremely unpredictable. The last thing you guys want to do is take a week-long vacation and it rains every single day. What I recommend instead is take 3 to 4 days at a time, whether that's extending your weekend or taking it midweek. And that way, if you take a couple days here and a couple days there, you won't get rained out for your entire trip. If you guys made it this far, I really appreciate it. Comment down below what tip you think is going to help you out most this year. Thank you guys so much, and I cannot wait to see you guys on the next one.